Hey everyone, welcome to Infinite Women. I'm Allison, and today I wanted to talk about women directors being snubbed at the Oscars, and how this correlates to telling women's stories versus men's. As of 2026, only 3 women have won the Best Directing Oscar since 1929, and only 9 women have even been nominated. Lena Wertmuller in 1976 for Seven Beauties, Jane Campion in 1993 for The Piano, and again in 2021 when she won for The Power of the Dog, Sofia Coppola in 2003 for Lost in Translation, Catherine Bigelow, the first woman to win, in 2009 for The Hurt Locker. That only took 80 years. Greta Gerwig in 2017 for Lady Bird. 2020 was the first and to date only instance of 2 women being nominated in the same year, with Chloe Zhao winning for Nomadland and Emerald Fennell nominated for Promising Young Woman. Zhao was nominated again for 2025's Hamnet. Justine Triet in 2023 for Anatomy of a Fall. Carolee Farge became the first woman nominated for a horror film with 2024's The Substance. While there has definitely been a shift in recent years, women have historically been rewarded for telling men's stories. Movies like Seven Beauties and The Hurt Locker are so focused on men that they don't even pass the Bechdel-Wallace test, meaning 2 named women characters talk about something other than a man. Because, yes, the bar really is that low, and yet so many movies can't even clear it. Campion lost for The Piano, about a woman and her daughter, but won for The Power of the Dog, which also fails the Bechdel-Wallace test. She also sparked controversy while accepting her Critics' Choice Award for the film by commenting for no apparent reason that Serena and Venus Williams, who were also at the ceremony, don't play against the guys like I have to. When Campion lost the first time with The Piano, she did win Best Screenplay, and stars Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin both took home acting Oscars for the film, yet the directing Oscar instead went to Clint Eastwood for the hyper-masculine western Unforgiven. When Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, about a man's midlife crisis, lost in 2003, it was to sexual predator Roman Polanski, who the world has known was a pedophile and rapist since the 1970s. He won instead with The Pianist, which also fails the Bechdel-Wallace test. Of the 3 women, only Chloe Zhao, who is also the only woman of color nominated for the award to date, won for a woman-centered film. Now, like I said, this has shifted in recent years, with the exception of The Power of the Dog. Lady Bird, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Anatomy of a Fall, The Substance, and Hamnet all center women's stories. But we've also seen countless snubs of women directors for fantastic movies. And in most cases, whether those movies are good isn't my opinion, it's the opinion of the Academy snubbing these directors based on the other Oscars these films have been nominated for and won, as well as other major awards. And I don't think it's a coincidence that almost all of them seem to center on women's and girls' stories. So here are dozens of Oscar snubs of women directors that double as movie recommendations if you haven't already seen them. It's obviously not an exhaustive list, so if you have any additions, please let me know in the comments. Starting in chronological order. First up is 1983's Yentl, which the iconic Barbra Streisand starred in, co-wrote, co-produced, and directed. This was her directorial debut, and got 5 nominations, but Streisand wasn't nominated for acting, writing, or directing, even though she did become the first woman to win Best Director at the Golden Globes. Streisand was snubbed again when it came to the 1991 romantic drama The Prince of Tides, when she was, once again, not nominated for either her starring role or her directing work, even as the film was nominated for 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and Best Cinematography. A few years after Yentl, Randa Haines was snubbed for 1986's Children of a Lesser God, about the relationship between a deaf woman and a hearing man. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actress, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Picture. This was Marlee Matlin's film debut, and at 21, she became the youngest Best Actress winner, as well as the first deaf winner in Oscar history. I know box office isn't meant to play into these decisions, but it also grossed $101.5 million worldwide on a $10.5 million budget. So this was a huge hit, and yet no nomination for Haines. 35 years later, another Marlee Matlin film, 2021's Coda, won several Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay for writer-director Sean Hayter, but no Best Director nomination, which will be a recurring theme for the women who both write and direct. Penny Marshall was a fantastic director, and several of her male-centered films, like Big, The Preacher Man, and Cinderella Man, were nominated for various Oscars, while female-centered ones, like the sports classic A League of Their Own, weren't. Seriously, A League of Their Own as a whole was robbed. As a side note, Big became the first film directed by a woman to gross more than $100 million at the US box office. But I particularly want to point out that her 1990 film Awakenings, starring Robert De Niro and Robin Williams, was nominated for Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actor for De Niro, but no directing nomination for Marshall. Sofia Coppola made her directorial debut with 1999's The Virgin Suicides. It wasn't nominated for a single Oscar, but has long since achieved cult classic status. I'm sure the fact that it's about a group of teen girls has nothing to do with this snub, just like it's totally a coincidence that Coppola's only film to garner her Oscar nominations, including Best Director and a win for Best Original Screenplay, was Lost in Translation, about a middle-aged white man, rather than any of her films centering young women, like Priscilla, Marie Antoinette, or The Beguiled. Julie Taymor's 2002 biopic of Frida Kahlo, Frida, was nominated for 6 Oscars, and won 2, but these did not include Best Director, Best Picture, or Best Original Screenplay. It did win Best Makeup, which feels a bit like Frida's unibrow won an Oscar, but its director didn't. It's also worth mentioning that Taymor had become the first woman to win a Tony for Best Direction of a Musical, with 1997's groundbreaking production of The Lion King on Broadway. The 2006 film Little Miss Sunshine was nominated for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress for 10-year-old Abigail Breslin, and Best Original Screenplay, but co-directors Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris were not nominated. It also grossed over $101 million on an $8 million budget. 2009 gave us Lana Scherfig's An Education, starring Carey Mulligan, who was nominated for Best Actress for her portrayal of a teen seduced by an older man. The film was nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, but since it's on this list, you know Scherfig didn't get a directing nod. The following year, Lisa Cholodenko brought us The Kids Are All Right, starring Annette Bening and Julianne Moore, as a middle-aged couple raising 2 teens. Although Cholodenko was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, along with the film's nominations for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actor, the Academy refused to acknowledge her contributions as director. The same thing happened to Deborah Gronick that year with Winter's Bone. She was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, but not Best Director, even though the film was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Actress for Jennifer Lawrence, who was only 20 at the time. 2003's serial killer biopic Monster was Patty Jenkins's directorial debut, which she also wrote. Yet, although the American Film Institute named it one of the year's top 10 films, star Charlize Theron won Best Actress, and Jenkins won the Independent Spirit Award for Best First Feature, among other accolades, she didn't get an Oscar nomination for either her script or direction. Kathryn Bigelow, the first woman to win, decided to make a war film that did pass the Bechdel-Wallace test, with 2012's Zero Dark 30, but I'm sure having two female leads had nothing to do with the fact that Bigelow wasn't nominated for Best Director this time around, despite 5 other nominations for Best Picture, Best Actress for Jessica Chastain, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film and Sound Editing. 2014's Selma was nominated for Best Picture, and John Legend and Common won Best Original Song for its anthem, Glory. But although Ava DuVernay was nominated for Best Director at the Golden Globes, she wasn't at the Oscars. This feels particularly gross because DuVernay basically rewrote the script from a white savior tale about Lyndon B. Johnson, but due to the contract producers had with the original writer, a white British man, he got approval on whether any co-writers got credit. He refused to allow her to be credited, even as he criticized her version. The irony here is that she was urged not to make waves in part because the producers didn't want controversy ahead of award season. DuVernay later said, "It is the only time in the industry I feel I really betrayed myself, because I wrote that script and my name was not on it. The credit was taken from me." Another civil rights film, 2022's Till, was directed and co-written by Nigerian-American filmmaker Chinonye Chukwu. Although it received accolades like being named one of the year's best films by the National Board of Review, and Chukwu becoming the first African-American woman to win the U.S. Dramatic Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, the lack of even nominations for the biggest awards was considered one more example of these institutions' disregard of Black women, with lead actress Danielle Deadwyler, especially because this was the same award season that saw Gina Prince Bythewood's The Woman King get similar treatment. Starring EGOT Viola Davis, the film about Benin's Dahomey warriors also didn't get a single Oscar nomination. Another Black woman director who was snubbed because no woman of color other than Chloe Zhao has ever even been nominated was Dee Rees, whose 2017 historical drama Mudbound did make history, with Rees becoming the first African-American woman nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and Rachel Morrison the first woman nominated for Best Cinematography, while Mary J. Blige was the first person nominated for both acting and Best Original Song in the same year. But, of course, no acknowledgement of Rees as director. Marielle Heller wasn't nominated for either 2018's crime biopic Can You Ever Forgive Me, starring Melissa McCarthy as a forger, or 2019's A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, about beloved children's television host Mr. Rogers, despite the 4 other Oscar nominations the films received. Although Alma Harrell's 2018 Honey Boy was completely snubbed at the Oscars, she did win the Directors Guild of America Award for Outstanding Directing. Which begs the question, if the organization of directors thought she was that year's best, why wasn't she even nominated at the Academy Awards? You could say the same thing about Charlotte Wells, who won the Guild's Outstanding Directorial Achievement in First-Time Theatrical Feature Film for her 2022 movie Aftersun, in addition to the BAFTA for Outstanding Debut by a British Writer, Director, or Producer, among other directing awards. But of course, no Oscar nomination. Now, 2020's Shiva Baby was widely acclaimed and did win plenty of awards and other recognition, but it wasn't nominated for a single Oscar or Golden Globe, which is the kind of decision that would have me yelling at the screen if I thought these awards were actually fair. There were a lot of factors involved. It's a comedy, its $200,000 budget is infinitesimal by today's standards. It was writer-director Emma Seligman's directorial debut, it came out during COVID lockdowns, the main character is a queer sex worker but also middle class, etc. Regardless, Seligman was, in my opinion, robbed, and her 2023 film Bottoms also should have gotten more credit on the awards side of the industry. I think you could say the same about Olivia Wilde's 2019 comedy Booksmart. And I don't think it's a coincidence that these are all comedies centering the personal lives of young women. In a familiar refrain, Sarah Polley won the Best Adapted Screenplay for her 2022 film Women Talking, but wasn't even nominated for Best Director, despite the film being nominated for Best Picture and the dozen critics societies that nominated her for Best Director in their own awards. Despite her nomination for 2017's Lady Bird, Greta Gerwig has been snubbed multiple times, perhaps most notably for 2023's Barbie. As a side note, I'm not the only one who was also annoyed that she was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay rather than Original. Given that this was the year that Justine Triet was nominated, it really gives the impression that the lone woman slot was already filled, and we couldn't possibly have two. Something that, as I mentioned earlier, has only happened once. But if you want to talk about a film that was actually adapted from another work, there's Gerwig's 2019 Little Women, which was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Picture, but no directing nomination for Gerwig, as though to say, we gave you one for Lady Bird, don't be greedy. And speaking of Little Women directors, it is my duty, as an Australian citizen, to mention Gillian Anderson, who directed the 1994 version with Winona Ryder. That movie was nominated for 3 Oscars, but none for Best Director. Her 1979 adaptation of the Aussie classic My Brilliant Career was nominated for a variety of international awards, including a Best Costume Oscar, and was Judy Davis's first starring role. While you could say that being a foreign director is a disadvantage, nominee Lena Wertmuller and winner Jane Campion were Italian and New Zealander respectively, and being an Aussie certainly doesn't seem to have held back Baz Luhrmann. 2019's The Farewell was an absolutely beautiful film, written and directed by Lulu Wang, and also gave Awkwafina a chance to really show what she could do as an actress, that most of her roles just don't, to the point she did win the Golden Globe for Best Actress. Yet the film wasn't nominated for a single Oscar, and it's hard not to see that as being at least partially due to the film having an Asian cast and being mostly in Mandarin. You know, a language other than English. There's a lot of overlap here with Past Lives, which came out in 2023. Lulu Wang was born in China but grew up in the US, while Past Lives writer-director Celine Song moved to Canada from South Korea when she was 12. Both are drawing on deeply personal experiences to tell stories about women who straddle these international cultural divides, and much of Past Lives' dialogue is in Korean. Although lead actress Greta Lee was also snubbed at the Oscars despite a phenomenal performance in a powerful film, unlike The Farewell, Past Lives was nominated for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay, which makes snubbing Song for Best Director even more glaring. Most recently, 2025's If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You has rightfully won a bunch of awards and been critically acclaimed, with a Best Actress Oscar nomination for star Rose Byrne. Yet, writer-director Mary Bronstein has largely been overlooked in both areas, at the same awards where Byrne is being nominated and winning for her acting. That's obviously not to say that Byrne doesn't deserve her accolades, but I think it does show how much more readily actresses are recognized, particularly because those categories are typically gendered compared to acknowledging women as writers and directors. That's all I've got for today. Join us next time on Infinite Women, and remember, well-behaved women rarely make history.